May 2009, Oklahoma. An 18-year-old woman named Ashley Parham is driving her Honda Accord. She gets into a minor fender bender, the kind of low-speed crash that happens thousands of times every day across America. Her airbag deploys, but instead of a cushion, she gets hit with metal shrapnel that severs her carotid artery. She bleeds out in the front seat before anyone can help her. The medical examiner who did the autopsy initially thought she'd been shot. That's how severe the metal fragments were. Her family had no idea the car itself had killed her. Your airbag was supposed to save your life. Instead, it became a bomb. Between 2009 and 2024, Takata airbags killed at least 27 people in the United States alone. Metal shrapnel exploded into their faces and chests during what should have been survivable accidents. And here's the part that should make your blood boil. The company knew for over a decade. This isn't some small-scale defect. We're talking about 100 million vehicles recalled worldwide, the largest automotive recall in history. And if you're driving a Honda, Toyota, Ford, BMW, Mazda, Nissan, or Subaru, built between 2002 and 2015, there's a real chance one of these airbags is sitting in your steering wheel right now, waiting. This is the story of how a century-old safety company turned a life-saving device into a lethal weapon, and why millions of these time bombs are still out there on the road. Before we dive into the deaths and the cover-up, you need to understand what went wrong. And to get that, you need to know how an airbag actually works. When your car's sensors detect a crash, they trigger a chemical reaction inside a metal canister. This creates an instant explosion of gas that inflates the bag in about 1/20th of a second. It's a controlled detonation, carefully engineered to cushion your body without causing harm. When it works right, you don't even process the miracle. You just walk away shaken but alive, call someone you love, and feel grateful. Millions of people owe their lives to this technology. But here's the critical word: controlled. Because what Takata built wasn't controlled at all. The airbag inflator is basically a tiny bomb mounted in your dashboard, and the chemical that creates the explosion has to be perfectly stable. For years, the industry used sodium azide as the propellant. Powerful, reliable, but toxic and expensive. Engineers wanted something cleaner and cheaper. And that's where Takata made the decision that would eventually kill their company and dozens of people. Takata wasn't some fly-by-night operation throwing together cheap parts in a sketchy factory. Founded in Japan in 1933, they'd been making safety equipment for nearly 80 years. They started with textiles, moved into parachutes during World War II, then pioneered seatbelt technology. By the 2000s, they were the world's second-largest airbag manufacturer, supplying nearly every major automaker on the planet: Honda, Toyota, General Motors, Ford, BMW, Mercedes-Benz. If you bought a car, odds were good that Takata built something inside it. Their reputation seemed bulletproof, but there was a crack in that reputation that most people missed. Back in the mid-1990s, Takata had a massive recall for seatbelt buckles. The plastic degraded, latches failed, and regulators fined both Takata and the automakers for not being upfront fast enough. It was a warning sign about corporate culture. When the data gets ugly and the numbers don't look good, who speaks up? Who tells the truth? And what stories does the company tell itself behind closed doors when safety and profit don't align? That seatbelt recall eventually faded from the headlines, but it established a pattern. When things went wrong, Takata's first instinct was to stall, minimize, and delay. Now fast forward to the early 2000s. Takata engineers are looking for ways to cut costs on airbag inflators. The pressure is intense. Automakers are squeezing suppliers on price. And if you can shave even a few dollars off each unit when you're making millions of them, the profit margins look beautiful on a spreadsheet. So Takata made the switch. Instead of using the industry standard propellants, they decided to go with ammonium nitrate. On paper, it looked perfect, cheap, energetic, gets the job done. But in the real world, ammonium nitrate has a fatal flaw. It's incredibly sensitive to moisture and heat. Think about what that means. You're installing a chemical in a car that's going to sit outside in every kind of weather for 10, 15, maybe 20 years. Summers in Arizona where the dashboard hits 160 degrees. Humid Florida nights where moisture seeps into everything. Cold Canadian winters followed by hot springs. Every season, every storm, every temperature swing affects the chemistry inside that metal canister. The ammonium nitrate absorbs moisture. Its crystal structure changes. And when it finally gets triggered in a crash, instead of a smooth, controlled burn, you get a violent overpressurization. The metal housing ruptures, and suddenly, shards of steel are flying through your cabin at hundreds of miles per hour. Imagine designing a parachute that gets unstable when it rains, then deploying millions of them and hoping for the best. That's essentially what Takata did. And the truly damning part, they knew. Internal tests in 2004 showed inflators rupturing during evaluations. Engineers raised red flags. They recommended switching to different propellants. But management looked at the cost of retooling factories and redesigning the system, and they said no. The math was simple and brutal. Fix the problem now for millions of dollars, or roll the dice and hope the lawsuits cost less. They chose wrong. At first, the pattern was easy to miss. A crash here, an unusual injury there. Someone gets in a fender bender, the airbag deploys, but the injuries don't match what you'd expect. Cuts in strange places, trauma that doesn't fit the accident profile. In the autopsy reports and medical records, you see words like anomaly and unexpected. Those words sound technical and isolated. They calm down the people on quarterly earnings calls, but they don't mean a thing to the families planning funerals. And here's where the cover-up really begins. Takata's engineers investigate. They see the ruptured inflator. They know what it means. But the official line from corporate is that this was an isolated manufacturing defect. Not a design flaw, not a systemic problem, just bad luck with one batch. So Honda recalls about 4,000 vehicles. 4,000. When the reality was that millions of cars had the same chemistry sitting in their dashboards, degrading a little more with every hot summer and humid night. More deaths follow. A woman in Florida. A man in Texas, another in Puerto Rico, every single one in hot, humid climates where the ammonium nitrate degraded faster. And every single time, Takata blamed it on isolated incidents, regional manufacturing variances, anything but the truth, which was that they'd built a fundamentally flawed product and sold over 100 million of them. By 2013, the pattern is impossible to ignore. Regulators start asking harder questions. Lawyers start digging through records. And then, in 2014, whistleblowers inside Takata leak documents to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, internal emails, test results that were never shared. And in one of those emails, a Takata executive uses 4 words that should have ended the company right there. This is a ticking time bomb. Let that sink in. They literally called it a ticking time bomb. Then they kept manufacturing them, kept installing them in new cars, and kept fighting every attempt to expand the recalls. Because every additional vehicle they had to fix was money out of their pocket. Every admission of a wider problem was a step closer to the massive liability they were desperately trying to avoid. But the bodies kept piling up. Carlos Solis, driving his Honda Civic in Texas in 2016. He gets rear-ended at low speed, the kind of accident where you exchange insurance info and drive away annoyed. His airbag explodes, a metal fragment goes into his neck, and he dies right there in the driver's seat while his 10-year-old daughter watches from the back. Hyen Tran, 24 years old, in a Virginia parking lot. Minor bump. Airbag deploys. Metal shreds her vertebral artery. She's gone before the ambulance even arrives. Jewel Brangman in the Bahamas, driving a BMW X5. Shrapnel hits her neck and chest. They airlift her to Florida. She dies during surgery, leaving 3 kids behind. These weren't high-speed highway crashes. These were the kinds of accidents that happen every single day. The ones you're supposed to walk away from with nothing worse than whiplash and a higher insurance premium. But because Takata chose to save a few bucks per airbag, these people bled out in vehicles that were supposed to protect them. By 2015, the truth is too big to hide anymore. the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration forces Takata's hand. They announce a recall of 34 million vehicles in the United States alone. The number keeps climbing. 67 million American cars, over 100 million worldwide, the largest automotive recall in human history. And it's not just one brand, it's 19 different automakers: Honda, Toyota, Ford, Chevrolet, BMW, Mercedes, Mazda, Nissan, Subaru. If it had 4 wheels and was built between 2002 and 2015, there's a decent chance it had a Takata airbag. The logistics turn into a nightmare. You need to manufacture enough replacement inflators to swap out 100 million defective ones, and you need to do it while still supplying new cars coming off assembly lines. Takata was the primary supplier, so there's no one else who can just step in and handle the volume. It takes years to build up enough replacement parts. Service bays fill with cars getting their dashboards torn apart, like delicate surgeries. Technicians pull out the old inflators, bolt in new ones, and every single repair represents one less person driving around with a potential bomb in their steering wheel. But here's the part that should terrify you. Millions of these airbags still haven't been fixed. People moved and never got the recall notice, bought a used car and didn't know about the history, got the letters and ignored them because they were too busy or didn't think it was that serious, or figured they'd get around to it eventually. In 2019, a man in Arizona died when his 2002 Honda Civic's airbag exploded during a crash. Honda had sent him 8 separate recall notices over 5 years. He never brought it in, and it killed him. Right now, today, as you're watching this, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration estimates there are still 6.4 million unrepaired Takata airbags on American roads. That's not a historical problem. That's a current threat. One of them might be in your driveway, your neighbor's car, the vehicle your kid drives to school. And the cruel irony is that you have no way of knowing which inflator is going to fail until the moment it does. It's a lottery you never signed up to play, with stakes you never agreed to. So what happened to Takata? In 2017, they did what companies do when the lawsuits and criminal charges pile up too high. They pleaded guilty: wire fraud, criminal conspiracy, $1 billion penalty from the Department of Justice. 3 executives were indicted on charges of falsifying test data and lying to regulators. But here's the thing that'll make you want to throw something at the screen. Those executives fled to Japan, and Japan refused to extradite them. So they're living free right now, probably retired on their executive pensions, while the families they destroyed are still grieving. In June 2017, Takata filed for bankruptcy, the largest bankruptcy in Japanese manufacturing history. A 100-year-old company obliterated. 46,000 employees around the world lost their jobs. The assets got sold to a Chinese-owned company called Key Safety Systems, and the Takata name was retired forever. The brand that once stood for safety became synonymous with one of the deadliest corporate failures in automotive history. The victims' families got settlements, anywhere from $1 million to $10 million or more, depending on the case. Honda alone paid out over $600 million in class action settlements. Other automakers shelled out billions. But no amount of money brings back an 18-year-old girl who bled out in a parking lot. No settlement check makes a 10-year-old forget watching their father die in the front seat. The executives made their choice back in the early 2000s, and dozens of families are still paying the price. And the recalls are still happening. Even now in 2025, automakers are identifying additional vehicles that need the fix, because some of these cars are over 20 years old and the chemistry just keeps degrading. That airbag that was fine in 2010 might be a serious risk in 2025 after 15 summers and 15 winters of heat cycling and moisture absorption. The older the car gets, the more dangerous the inflator becomes. If you own a used car, this is where the story gets personal. You need to know if your vehicle has one of these airbags. In some states, dealers are required to check for open recalls before they sell you a car. In others, you're on your own. And here's the problem. A car with an unfixed Takata airbag is worth thousands of dollars less on resale. So some sellers just don't mention it. They hope you won't check. They cash their check and let you drive away with the problem. Here's what you need to do, and you need to do it today. Go to NHTSA Gov Recalls. That's the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's official website. You'll see a search box. Enter your VIN, which is the vehicle identification number stamped on a metal plate on your dashboard, visible through the windshield on the driver's side. It takes about 30 seconds. The site will tell you immediately if your vehicle has any open recalls, including Takata airbags. If it does, do not ignore it. Do not put it off. Do not tell yourself you'll get around to it next month. Call your dealership and schedule the repair immediately. And here's the critical part. It is completely free. You do not pay a dime. The automaker covers the entire cost of parts and labor because they're liable. It takes about 1 to 2 hours at the service bay. You can wait or they'll give you a loaner, but you walk out with a vehicle that won't kill you if you get in a fender bender. Even if you've owned your car for 10 years and never had a problem, check anyway. Some recalls were issued recently for vehicles that are 2 decades old. The chemistry doesn't care how long you've been driving safely. It just keeps degrading, and one day it crosses the threshold from stable to dangerous. You don't get a warning light. You don't feel a difference. The only way you know is when it deploys, and by then it's too late. And if you're shopping for a used car, make checking the VIN part of your buying process. Before you hand over any money, before you sign any papers, pull up that NHTSA website and run the number. If the car has an open Takata recall and the seller didn't mention it, walk away. Either they're ignorant about their own vehicle, which is a red flag, or they're deliberately hiding it, which is worse. No car is worth gambling with your life. The Takata scandal isn't just about defective airbags. It's about what happens when corporations decide that quarterly profits matter more than the people using their products. It's about executives who saw the warning signs, ran the cost-benefit analysis, and chose to gamble with other people's lives because fixing the problem was expensive. And it's about a regulatory system that moves slow while the bodies pile up, because proving a systemic defect takes years of investigation while the dangerous products stay on the road. A decision made in a conference room in the early 2000s to save maybe $10 or $11 per airbag inflator rippled forward through time and space. It moved through supply chains and assembly lines, through dealerships and driveways, and landed in split seconds that changed everything. A parking lot crash that should have meant a trip to the body shop instead meant a funeral. A minor rear-end collision that should have been an insurance claim instead meant a child growing up without a parent. And the people who made that decision, the executives who saw the tests, read the reports, and chose profit anyway, most of them faced no real consequences. They're retired, comfortable, living out their lives while the families they destroyed are still picking up the pieces. That's the cost of corporate crime when the punishment is just money. A $1 billion fine sounds massive until you realize the company went bankrupt anyway, and the individuals who actually made the deadly choices are living free in countries that won't touch them. This is why you check your VIN. This is why you don't ignore recall notices. This is why when a letter shows up with your car's name on it and words like safety recall in bold print, you don't toss it with the junk mail, because somewhere in a laboratory years ago, someone ran a test. They saw an inflator rupture. They wrote a report that said this design was dangerous, and someone above them decided the report wasn't as important as the profit margin. Your airbag was designed to give you a second chance when everything goes wrong on the road. It's supposed to be the backup system, the last line of defense between you and serious injury. For millions of people, it has been exactly that. But for the victims of Takata's greed, that safety device became the thing that killed them. The cushion became the weapon. The protection became the threat. 30 people dead worldwide, over 400 injured, 100 million vehicles recalled, a century-old company destroyed, billions of dollars in settlements and fines. And after all of that, after all the investigations and lawsuits and bankruptcies, there are still 6.4 million of these airbags out there, still in cars, still degrading, still waiting for the accident that triggers them. Maybe nothing happens. Maybe the chemistry holds stable just long enough, or maybe it doesn't. The scandal isn't just what happened between 2004 and 2017. It's the shadow that still hangs over every drive, every trip to the grocery store, every morning commute. It's the reminder that the devices we trust with our lives are only as reliable as the people who built them and the choices they made when nobody was watching. And sometimes those choices are measured in dollars saved and lives lost. So, do yourself a favor. Close this video. Go to nhtsa.gov recalls. Enter your VIN. It takes 30 seconds, and it might save your life, because the worst part about the Takata scandal